Hello everyone. In this video I wish to pay homage to President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, B-A-M-A-L-L-B, I should say Sir Robert Mugabe, the father of the nation, the founder of Zimbabwe, former chairman of the African Union and so forth, liberator of Africa. It's no exaggeration to say that Comrade Mugabe saved the world, and he is a true socialist. That's why he lives humbly, always seeking frugality and being self-sacrificing and not salting away millions of dollars in foreign bank accounts while many of his people live in abject penury. So they say judge a man by his friends, and that's right. And look at the wonderful friends that President Mugabe had, such as the late Gaddafi, of happy and glorious memory, and let me see, the Chinese government, which does so much to encourage freedom of expression and fair elections and the promotion of human rights, and is not at all into environmental degradation or the exploitation of the proletariat. So you should also judge a man by his foes. Look at Mugabe's enemies and you'll see how righteous he is. He's been condemned by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Well, it's obvious why, because Desmond Tutu is a notorious white supremacist. It's a well-known fact that Desmond Tutu is the imperial grand dragon of the Ku Klux Klan in South Africa, and that's why he denounced President Mugabe. So President Mugabe, at the age of 90, he boasted that he was fit as a fiddle. Sorry, I shouldn't say boasted. He's not a braggart. He's exceedingly self-effacing and modest. At the age of 93, he is now almost middle-aged. May he live for 10,000 years. He is an extremely virile young man, an athlete. He should be the heavyweight boxing champion of Zimbabwe. It is said that he can bend an iron bar over his membrum virile because he is in the best of sorts. So any difficulties that Zimbabwe has faced is because of a British plot. It's absolutely obvious, and this is not scapegoating at all or anything. These elderly whites have caused the problem. There's a tiny number of white geriatrics in Zimbabwe, and they are almighty, and everything that's ever gone wrong is because of them, and they're entirely responsible. Their machinations. They really are witch doctors. It's these sanctions from the British which have caused the economy to be in tatters, even though Zimbabwe hardly did any trade with the UK right before the sanctions, and it hasn't stopped the Zimbabwean elite having their children studying in the United Kingdom. I think perhaps it's the ghost of Ian Smith that haunts Zimbabwe. Ian Smith is a poltergeist, and he's the one who's messing everything up. It's not President Mugabe's policies. It's not his cronies creaming off wealth and leaving everybody else to live in poverty and scratch a living. Yes, it's the Brits who wreck the economy because they are utterly wicked. As President Mugabe correctly said, Britain has gone to the dogs. We still respect the Queen. It is the demons in Downing Street whom we must exorcise. President Mugabe was on the money when 20 years ago he said Britain is run by gay gangsters. He couldn't be more right. Look at Boris Johnson, who is a flaming homosexual. Everybody knows it. Not a single person has ever gone hungry in Zimbabwe because President Mugabe, he is utterly self-sacrificing, and he gives all his wealth to the needy, which is wonderful. Hyperinflation is a lie. It never happened. Anyway, the hyperinflation just showed how amazing Mugabe had made things with 213 million% inflation in a year. It was record-breaking. So it shows that he was really good and so much better than what went before, than the Reverend Canaan Bananas rule or Abel Muzorewa's rule. So not a single person has fled the country due to poverty or unemployment. They've all stayed there, which shows how successful President Mugabe is, and that he's been doing so much to improve the lives of ordinary people. And it's absolutely right that the president models Zimbabwe on China, China where human rights are fully respected and where hundreds of people were not shot dead on the 4th of June 1989, President Mugabe, he really is the Mao of Africa. Mao, who did so much for his people, who was such a humanitarian, and who didn't cause millions of people to die of starvation, and who didn't run a demented cult of the personality. So President Mugabe is gentle as a lamb. He would never hurt a fly, nor would he commit adultery, because he's morally upstanding. He is a sincere Christian. He is a practicing Catholic, and he didn't start having an extramarital affair with another man's wife whilst his first wife was dying of cancer. And Mugabe is quite right in saying that British rule did absolutely nothing for Zimbabwe, that there was a very, very negative side to it. But no, there was nothing good to carry on. I mean, Zimbabweans now, they don't speak English, they don't wear Western suits, they don't play cricket or rugby or anything. They haven't copied any of the British institutions, so their army doesn't wear British-style uniforms, they use the British system of ranks, or their courts, they're not modelled on the English courts or anything of that nature, and there were no advances in science, technology or medicine that were got from the British. It was all entirely negative. President Mugabe has done so much to prevent the spread of HIV, public awareness and so forth, and he has the greatest sympathy for people who suffer from this disease, and he made sure that everyone's got antiretrovirals, because that's what a socialist would do, would really care about those who are in need. He doesn't spend lavishly on himself. He hasn't been flying himself at taxpayers' expense to Singapore for world-class medical treatment whilst children are dying avoidably. There's no nepotism at all in Zimbabwe under him, because he believes in absolute equality, and his wife does not spend huge amounts on luxury clothes. May Gucci Grace become the next president, because there are big shoes to fill, not Gucci shoes, it seems to me. So what an utterly splendiferous president he is, and he has bathed the country in the radiance of the sun and moon. And by the way, thousands of civilians were not killed in Matabeleland in the early 80s. It was outrageous that these civilians in Matabeleland, they ran onto bullets, and they should be sued for damaging the bullets. It caused the bullets an awful lot of pain, the same as many protesters have outrageously damaged the truncheons of the police by hitting their heads onto the truncheons, which is an act of vandalism. So it's the protesters who are at fault and not anybody else. So I wish President Mugabe could be ruling my country, the Republic of Ireland, because he has done so much for the upliftment of his, because it was so benighted beforehand. And it's absolutely right that he's formed a firm alliance with North Korea, where there is no crazy cult of the personality, where there is no megalomaniac hereditary ruler who has starved people to death whilst he pursues his madcap schemes. Anyway, that is President Mugabe, and I know he's extraordinarily popular. Absolutely everybody likes him, and the utterly fair elections have reflected that.